Hi, this is Agent P, aka Agent P for non-Portuguese speakers, and I make this little tutorial to showcase how I make my ambient occlusion baking and my normal map bakings inside Blender without having to use any external tools. So what I did here is a little high poly and a low poly versions of the same model, and an interesting thing is that they the best way to make this work is to match their geometry in general. So you can see the edges, they fit in the high poly, and if they don't, you can use the cage feature, but in this case, and especially for hard surface models, it's easier to make like this, to make them match like this. So if you don't know how to do this, you can add a bevel. Just make sure this face is disconnected. Just make sure that when you're making your bevel, your profile shape is set to 1 and not 0.5. The standard value is 0.5 and it will look like this. It's like a rounded corner. So you just bump it up to 1 and it looks like this. So when I smooth shaded this, it will look like this. But in this case, I'm just gonna leave it low poly like this. And I have already made my UVs. They're quite simple, just to demonstrate. So the process isn't really difficult. You just get your low poly, duplicate it, and put it inside your high poly. Here we need to set up our materials, and I had already played with this and tried to record earlier, so I'm just gonna make an image texture and make a new one. So we have this classic colorful cube that everyone likes, and here in the corner we have our render engine. By default it's set to EV. We're gonna set it up to cycles. You can use any device, so it works with both GPU and CPU, but usually CPU doesn't give bad results. Sometimes GPU does, and I don't know why. Sometimes GPU is worse than CPU, but in this case I'm gonna use GPU, and also you cannot change this back easily sometimes. I don't know why. Anyway, you go here to the bake section over here, is downside in our render properties, and I'm gonna start with the ambient occlusion that is just easier than normal maps, and by default this box will be unchecked and minimized. So if I take my model over here and I just hit bake directly into my low poly, it is gonna bake whatever my low poly looks like. It works sometimes, and at some cases it might be cool to mix your low poly ambient occlusion with your high poly ambient occlusion. It's useful, but most of the cases you want your high poly down to your low poly. So what we do is we select our high poly and our low poly, this second one, that is the baking one, and I'm gonna select the selected to active box. Just make sure to leave some value higher than 0, because what happens if I just press bake like this? It's gonna make some weird glitches like this, and the reason for this is that it doesn't know if it's facing outside or inward our model. So just make some higher value like this, 0.01 on your extrusion value, and this is gonna work just perfectly fine. you can just save your material, and I already have another one over here. I'm just gonna mess it up, so I'm gonna set this to something else like normal. Here's a tip if you're not used to material nodes. uh, when you hit bake, this is gonna bake in whatever node you have selected. So I've selected this one over here, it's gonna bake inside this one, not this one. So just make sure to select the right one before you hit bake, otherwise you can just delete a lot of time that you already spent baking something else. So same thing when you're baking a normal, just make sure to select the right Y values. If you're working with OpenGL, which is not the case for source, you select the plus values, and if you're working with direct 3D, you select -Y. Make sure you have a value higher than 0, and it should be higher than your high poly topology in general. So if you have like a little bump, like a screw or some kind of handle, some holes, maybe an intrusion, you need to have a value higher than this, because otherwise it won't bake. And I'm just gonna hit bake over here, so you can see like the details that I had, they are perfectly baked. So here's another thing, if I just get this Normalmap and plug it into our Normalmap, it won't gonna work at all. See, it doesn't work at all. The trick to use a Normalmap in Blender is that we need a Normalmap node, and it also doesn't work. Just make sure that you have selected the right one. If you're using an older version of Blender, this one is 5.1, and early versions you need to add curves, RGB curves node, and manually invert your green channel, and this is a lot of time that you waste. So this node, this updated node, is a really life changer. So what you need to do is save your image, your normal maps. I already have one, so just delete the old one. And you need to set this as a non-color. So you go here on color space and select non-color, and voila, this is working. So this is the process that I usually use to bake, and there is another box called Cage that is mostly useful for like organic stuff. So I'm just gonna make this very quickly, and I hope this works this time. I'm just gonna add a little sphere over here. So this is our sphere, and I'm just gonna make a high poly one. Let's say it's Suzanne. Just make it fit inside of this, and let's say I'm gonna bake this monkey head in this ball, and for some reason this is what I want to do. So I just copy this one here and copy this one. So I'm just gonna add new images over here. I'm gonna add an image texture, and let's just put this as base color. So what I'm gonna do here is, if I wanna bake something that is more complex than my low poly, I'm probably gonna use a cage. And the way this works in Blender is you need to have the same model of your low poly and just inflate. In this case I'm just scaling, but you can make a skin modifier and this is probably gonna work well. So I just select my low poly the same way. So my high poly first, my low poly second, and here's where it gets a little bit tricky. You select your cage and you select your cage over here. So let's just select this one and try to bake, let's say, an ambient occlusion. And yeah, just hit bake. This is what I end up. You need to match your max ray distance until you start getting some kind of better results. I think in this case I haven't messed up a UV. Just go back over here. Yeah, I don't want to select this one, so I'm just gonna select these two. Now this is gonna work. So this is how you're gonna do this. And of course this is kind of cursed version of baking, but you can just do this with any kind of organic models, and this is probably gonna work better than trying to match anything or match your values. You just duplicate your low poly, inflate it or skin modifier, and try to make this baking. I'm just gonna finish what I have started. So let me just get here, save as Susan normal, and voila, I'm gonna have a cursed version of a monkey head that looks awful. As yeah, this really looks weird. Anyway, I hope this is a useful tutorial. I'm gonna probably leave this somewhere behind my YouTube channel, and I don't know if anyone's ever gonna see this, and I hope you can learn something and ask me if you need some tips. So just ask me, please. And that's it.